We are live in multiple locations now, and then we'll just give people a few minutes to shuffle in. Welcome, everyone. Please introduce yourselves in the comments, and we will get things moving along here. Kirsty, thank you for joining us this morning.
I love the music in the background. It's working well.
Yeah, Restream is, we appreciate the platform. They're doing a great job building new tools. This is apparently their music AI tool they just added, which is great.
Yeah,
Before
I love
you
it.
had to like throw in Spotify and try to figure out what song to play, and now I'm just like, there's just a few selections and it's much shorter.
Perfect. I was going to say the music's great. I won't start dancing. Everyone will be pleased to know because my dancing ability isn't that great. So we'll keep to some really good workplace content.
Yeah, we'll keep to very strong workplace content, less strong dance content.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Hello, Annie. Hello, Kayla. Good morning. Some folks in the Collective Connect community chiming in already.
Cool.
All right. Well, I believe we are going to get started just to make sure we can optimize time here. Kirsty has a lot to share with us, and then we want to leave a lot of time for Q&A for everybody. So I'm going to turn off the music and we'll get started. I wish we could have music the entire time, but I think that'd be pretty distracting.
It's quite nice.
But thank you. Yeah, it's like it keeps the mood going a little bit. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Omar from Collective. We provide information, resources, and community for workplace professionals. We are very excited today to be joined by Kirsty Angerer from Leesman Index. Kirsty is a human-centric designer. She is also the director of development for Leesman, and she is overall an incredible human in workplace. And we are very excited to have her on today, sharing information about the workplace reset and some of the research that Leesman has been doing, but that she's been sharing all around the world in her whirlwind travels as she goes about. But we're very excited to have her here today. Thank you so much for joining us, Kirsty.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I'm really looking forward to sharing some of this research. As you say, I've been traveling around, not only me, but a lot of our team have been traveling around for the last month sharing this information. And we've had some really good response. So hopefully it'll drive some really good conversation today as well.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right in. And just so everyone knows, Kirsty's going to be presenting some information. We're going to be running through it pretty quickly. And then once we get through that, we're going to save a lot of Q&A at the end. So please do put your questions in the chat box, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible, as quickly as possible, if that makes sense.
Sounds good. I'm just going to check with you, make sure that everyone can see my screen okay.
Yep, we're up everywhere.
Amazing. Good stuff. Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Omar, for having me, and great to be here with the collective and all of you as well. My name's Kirsty Angerer. I'm a development director here at Leesman. I joined last year. My background is in ergonomics consulting, so I spent a lot of my career designing workplaces from an ergonomics perspective. So I might bring some of that lens across to some of this information here as well. But now I work with some of our largest corporate clients to help them with their strategies and share some of this data and insight with them to inform future workplaces and inform future great workplaces at that as well. So to get started, I wanted to share that we actually last year became B Corp certified. And if you haven't heard what B Corp is all about, it's a certification across B Lab, which certifies the sort of highest standards of social and environmental performance. So we're doing things for purpose and profit aligned. And that's why we get to share all of this research freely across all of these different platforms as well. And it's really what I love about Leesman as well, that we can share all of this and create a brilliant future for our workplaces too. And so from a Leesman perspective, our purpose is to provide the data and insights to help you build better workplaces. And we do that through a survey methodology, which I'll run through that and then really dig deep into that data as well. But before I do any of that, I really wanted to jump in and share a little bit of a history lesson in some ways and describe how Leesman was born and how that might impact you and the types of organizations that you're working with as well. So what you're looking at in front of you now is a floor plan of the Vitra office in Switzerland. I'm sure many of your clients or contacts or network here, Omar, will know who Vitra are. And this is the Will I Am Marine workplace in Switzerland, as I mentioned. Now, this was a floor plan that was designed back in 2000 by Seville Peach, a Turkish designer, and it's a beautiful designer. I'll share some photos in a second so you get to see the essence of what that workplace design looks like. But Tim, our CEO and founder of Leesman, he worked with Vitra and worked at Vitra for a number of years between 2005 and 2009. And he would pop into this office once a month or once every 6 weeks to bring clients and contacts and share that experience of what this office felt like as well. As he entered the room here or the office, he'd enter through some stairs on the first floor, grab one of those visitors' desks at the very beginning, grab a coffee, and within a couple of sort of motions would be in the heart of the workplace. It's around 30 meters deep. The space was punctuated with two indoor outdoor spaces in the middle here. It's probably where I would spend most of my time, I think. And then some enclosed spaces around the footprint as well, and then also a library area for more focused or independent work as well. So as you can see, there are some real distinct elements to this floor plan, which was designed by Seville Peach back in 2000. And I'll show you some photos now. As you can see, it's very much the 2000s. If you look at the outfits that people are wearing here, they're obviously wonderful. But this is the part of the office experience here. The next image is the cafe area as well, and then some of these enclosed spaces where people would have some meetings. And then this indoor and outdoor space, which I think is absolutely brilliant. It's in the middle of the office layout, which just draws people into experiencing nature whilst they're in that enclosed space also. And then you have this library environment as well. And as you can see, there's this little nook and this sort of window where you can see through the office as you sit in the library. So whilst you might be in this sort of intimate or focused sort of space of mind working in the library, you still have this opportunity to connect with others by that viewpoint through the rest of the office as well. And then one of Tim's favorite places to sit in the office was at this elevated desk area, which was close to reception. So as people were entering and exiting the space, you had this opportunity to interact, connect at this eye level point of view as well. And obviously have this immense view in front of you there, which you can see also. So some real distinct elements across that floor plan. And I really want everybody to take a snapshot of what this looks like, the images that I've shown you, and the fact that it was the network office, which was what it was named back then in 2000. And I'll bring you back to this story at the very end again. So just take a little snapshot there. And so I guess the reason why Leesman was born was Tim wanted to eloquently explain the experience that he felt when moving through this space and when he brought clients and contacts and his network through this space, why people felt it was such a special environment to be in. And I think obviously intuition has a lot to say, a feeling has a lot to say for things. But we're all working for businesses, money comes into play, data comes into play. And how can you eloquently describe a space and how outstanding the experience is with just that feeling? And so that's why the Leesman Index was born, to identify how we could measure that feeling and measure that experience that could then move forward. So, in terms of the Leesman methodology, we investigate and analyze what employees do at their workplaces and how well each of those activities are supported. We then link that to business corporate outcomes. So things like environmental sustainability, communication, connection, productivity. And that gives us what we call a Leesman Index score. That's for the office environment. And then as a catalyst of the pandemic, we created the HLMI, which is the Leesman Home Environmental Score. And that's on a scale of 0 to 100. The closer to 100, the better your experience or the more outstanding your experience. Overlaid on top of that, we also look at what employees need to support that work. So, what are the workplace features when you're entering that workplace environment? What are the features that you need to be able to do the activities that you want to do correctly in that space that then purposely add value to that overall business outcome and the impact that your business wants to achieve from your people? So, looking at those sort of three elements, to date, or up until Q2 2023, we're just updating the last quarter here. To date, we have over 1 million responses to our office survey, which means it's one of the most diverse and richest data sets for employee experience around the world. And I think we're really proud of that data set. And particularly for me personally, I think what's really interesting to see is, as a catalyst of the pandemic, when we brought out the home working survey, we were then in this really unique position to compare and contrast the office with that home experience. And so since middle of 2021 up until now, we've also had responses in the region of 340,000 for the office and 380,000 for the home-based assessment as well. So what does that look like from a scoring perspective? What does that look like from the benchmark right now with all of the workplaces that we've surveyed to date? Well, the Leesman Office Index score, so the LMI score, is currently sitting at 65.0, and the HLMI, so that home experience score, is 75.8 HLMI. And what that means, I'm sorry to say, if there are anybody on this workplace and architects and designers or anybody in facilities, that the average home supports the average knowledge worker better than the average office. And that's still true today. So it means that a space that is inherently designed for us to live in and be with our families and friends is ultimately better supporting our people from a work perspective than the office, the environment that was designed for work. And as I say, that is still true today. And it's based on a couple of factors, which I'll run through as well. That's not to say that the office is dead in any way, shape, or form. We very much love the fact that the office is still there, and we believe the office has a really important place for us all to be in. And there are clear reasons why that is, and many of you will know them as well. But I'll hope to show some of that data and insight as well that goes along with that sort of general sentiment behind it. Now, of course, none of this data or insight would be here without all of the organizations and brands that we work with. And this is just a real snapshot of the organizations we're working with at the moment. We're really fortunate to work with some of the best around the world, small, medium, and then some of the largest as well. And without all of these organizations, without them embedding the Leesman Index into their strategies and their workplace environments, the Leesman Index ultimately wouldn't exist. So I guess the point here is to continue measuring your workplaces so that we can continue to share this research widely across the world with you. Now, on top of what we do with measuring and analyzing employee experience and the scores that we produce or the scores that come out of these surveys, we have something called Leesman Plus certification. Now, Leesman Plus is deeming those outstanding workplaces. So any workplace that scores 70 or above on that scale of 0 to 100, we deem as an outstanding workplace. And this is one of those examples. So Boston Consulting Group in London achieved Leesman Plus this year, and we hosted our recent London event there. And it's a brilliant space and very clearly has identified some features that is purposeful for them as an organization. And you can see that as you walk through the space and experience the space as well. Very much the same with BHB. So I was recently in Melbourne as well, and I got to experience this workplace as well. This is, I believe it's their 7th Leesman Plus building around the world. We have been surveying BHP offices and workplaces since 2018 across 20 surveys. So they've really taken this opportunity seriously to identify what their people want, which is aligned to their overall purpose and workplace why, and then implementing the features that are going to contribute to that workplace why in the future. And so that's why they've really increased and improved that scoring and overarchingly that employee experience across the world as well. And then lastly, another example, GPA, so the Government Property Agency in Birmingham. That's Birmingham in the UK, not in the US. And they've also used Leesman data over the last couple of years. And this specific example was moving people from 8 distinct environments that were underperforming to one outstanding space that they created with the use of some of the Leesman data that they surveyed with. And moving 1,700 civil servants is no mean feat, especially from 8 underperforming buildings into this one space, but it also yielded a cost saving to the taxpayer of over £2 million. So there's some real financial benefit to some of these changes when you're looking at this workplace design across the business outcome that you want to achieve as well. So those are just a few examples of what can be achieved when you're measuring the employee experience and implementing those changes based on the strategy that you put in place as a leadership group. So I'll jump in now to some research. We typically, at least when we're doing research, often on a 6-monthly basis, we've got our research team that are diving into the data as we speak to look into what are the next trends upcoming and what else we're seeing as well. But this is the workplace reset. So what is the new minimum viable office that we need to be creating to support a really good employee experience for all of our people around the world. Now, it's a framework, as I say, for the post pandemic workplace. What do employees do there, and what are the essential things that they need to do it very well? The research that we did was logistic regression and principal component analysis, and that explores how the activities employees perform determine what features they require from the workplace. And so you can see here some of the data analysis. As I mentioned previously, we have over 1 million responses to our office survey. Looking into that much data would take us much longer than a couple of years. So we did this type of logistical regression and principal component analysis to identify a group in the data that would be representative of all of the data overarchingly. But I guess the approach to this research assumes one critical assertion, and I'm sure many people on this call here will understand this, that the form a workplace takes must be derived from what its employees seek to do there, and not the other way around. Otherwise, we're already failing at the forefront of this office experience. But before any of that occurs, we need to understand or determine the why of that workplace. What is the purpose of your workplace? Particularly in this post pandemic era, when a lot of us can do many of our activities to do our job well at home, that why workplace becomes inherently even more important, because to magnetize me out of the home, or any of us out of our home experiences into the office workplace, there is a lot more thought that needs to go into it as well. So thinking about that why workplace first of all, and what are the reasons why you have those buildings and that space to draw people to enact some great experiences. And then once you've identified or defined that purpose, you'll have a better clue about what employees are expected to do in that workplace and the work activities specifically. And then this should service that purpose. And then once you understand the function, or the functions that have been established, you then also now can understand the features and the inputs that essentially will serve the function and the activities that you want to be done there. So, absolutely, your organization could well be somewhat different in terms of the features that are important that I'll show you shortly. But this methodology can be overlaid into any survey that we're doing at Leesman as well. But let me jump into some of the data and the statistical analysis that we've been able to achieve with this research here. What you'll notice I will also do is pepper an abstract example of how this might link to what we've been able to achieve here with the workplace. So that abstract example is understanding what is the why of an airport? What is the purpose of an airport? And a really interesting quote here that I'll let you read yourselves. It can hardly be a coincidence that no language on earth has ever produced the expression as pretty as an airport. Airports are ugly, some are very ugly. Some attain a degree of ugliness that can only be the result of special effort. I think most of us who travel for work or otherwise can appreciate that quote. Not all airports, I should say. I was recently in Singapore, and that is probably one of the most beautiful airports around, but even then has its moments as well. But if we think about the purpose of an airport, what is that? And it's really to accommodate the efficient and safe arrival and departure of airline passengers, their luggage, and accompanying freight. It's a very distinct purpose that they have. And what I want you to think about is, if you were to imagine now your workplace, and if your CEO or your leadership team had to write that type of sentence, that length of a sentence to describe your workplace why, what would it say? And that's something to really consider. So when we looked at our 10 impact statements here at Leesman, and when you go through the survey, this is one of the first things that you would answer: an agreement to any of these statements. Do you agree or disagree on the spectrum to these statements? And we found statistical relationships in 7 out of the 10 impact statements. And we then grouped these into 4 areas. So productivity, meeting and collaboration, community and culture, and pride and enjoyment. Now, what you might think is that obviously all of these impacts, all of these business outcomes should be something that we prioritize across all workplaces. And I wouldn't disagree with that. In fact, I think a lot of these things we do want in the workplace to be outstanding, or at the very least working very well, whether that's productivity, building this knowledge sharing environment for community and culture, an environment that enables us to collaborate effectively and innovate together as a community and a collective, or just having that pride and enjoyment? Would you want to bring your parents, your family, your children, or your ex-colleagues to this space? Does it have that level of pride surrounding it? So as I say, you might feel that all of these sort of corporate outcomes are something that you want to try and achieve with your workplace. And that is something that can definitely occur. But it then becomes a very difficult task because every activity that attaches to each of these business purposes has to be equally working very well. Or you might choose to prioritize just one. And I think there's nothing wrong with either one of those answers, and there really is no right answer. It depends on your organization and the strategy that you have and the ultimate business outcome that you want to achieve on an annual basis, and then much further beyond that in your sort of 10-year plan as well. And what is the progress of that? So either or, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter to us. It just depends on your strategy and what you're trying to achieve here. But if you're trying to achieve all of them, so productivity, meeting, community, and pride, at a very high level, you've got a big task ahead of you, but that is also fine if you've got the resource behind you. Now, when we look at the purpose, within this research report that we can certainly share with you, Omar, and your collective community as well, we've identified sort of a checklist for each of these steps. So this is the first checklist, the purpose checklist. Questions that we would ask you and ask you to ask of your leadership team when you're thinking about that workplace why. Do you have a workplace why, and what is it? And is that static for the next 3 or 5 years, or is it more fluid in nature? Have you considered the variation across the lines of business and the departments? And do all of your employees who are walking through that space understand that purpose and the outcomes that you're trying to achieve as well? It's all well and good the leadership team knowing that, but does everybody else know that who are walking through that workplace as well? So that was purpose, identifying that workplace why. Then we move into this next section here, which is the function, the activities that you might want to do in the workplace based on that workplace why. If we think about the airport function, the activities that you do there, queuing for check-in, passing through security, we've all been through the pain of that, and then obviously boarding the aircraft as well. These are all very distinct activities involving passengers at airports, and they're functionally critical to achieving that overarching purpose that I described before, which is the efficient and safe arrival and departure of airline passengers, their luggage, and accompanying freight as well. So, if we think about that from a workplace perspective, we identified out of the 21 activities that employees would typically answer as important to them in their role, we identified 8 of those activities to be important to more than 50% or more people in these workplaces. And these are the 8 here. So, you've got things like individual focused desk based work, planned meetings, telephone conversations. Now, telephone conversations might surprise some individuals because we're obviously in this more video conferencing era where we're in a video conferencing first meeting moreover than telephone conversations. But in fact, many organizations very much still value telephone conversations. But I can say that when we're looking into our data as well, that there is going to be a pinch point probably in the next 6 to 12 months where video conferencing and telephone calls does start to change in importance, where video conferencing will surpass telephone conversations in importance and telephone conversations will start to decrease. But that's not to detract from the fact that telephone conversations is still an important activity for a lot of organizations as well. But these are the sort of top 8. And so when you look at these functions and these activities, and as you align them with the business impact and the business outcomes, this is what we've been able to statistically map here. So, as an example, if productivity is one of those business outcomes or workplace wise that are important to you as an organization, we can see here that individual focused desk based work and telephone conversations as an activity or activities are important for that overarching productivity outcome is going to be important for. So those are 2 activities that you would want to start to prioritize to make sure that productivity within that organization is inherently good or improved upon. And then you look at meetings and collaboration. If that is your purpose, your workplace why is to bring people together, to have meetings, to collaborate on all sorts of different projects, then these are the types of activities that are important for that to occur. Planned meetings, unplanned meetings, and collaboration, as well as video conferencing. And then the same goes for community and culture. We have these distinct activities, and then pride and enjoyment as well. So relaxing and taking a break, and informal social interaction. Now, this is the full list. As I say, if you find all four of these impact statements, or if you find all four of these groupings important to you as an organization, and that's your ultimate workplace why, you want all four of these to be part of that workplace why, that's absolutely fine. It just means that all eight of these activities need to be working equally as well to achieve that ultimate business outcome and business goal here. Now, what does that mean then when we're thinking about this hybrid working environment, or working world, so that home versus the office? We have, through our data, identified three distinct profiles. And as you can see here, they're office leaning, balanced hybrid, and remote leaning. And when identifying these personas, we've looked at two variables. So, what activities do people find important, and what is the quality of their home setup? So, for example, I'm at home at the moment. I am very fortunate to have a sort of office in my garden down that I sort of refurbished this last year. And so I have the ability to come out here and have a really good ergonomic setup for me. Others, though, may be working from a dining room table in their home. They might be house sharing, so therefore they're working from their bedroom environments as well. So the difference in quality of that experience very much varies depending on the type of environment you have in that home setup. And that then influences what you're seeing here in terms of these personas as well, and how effectively those activities can happen across the different environments. So when we looked at this data in this workplace reset research, you can see here the difference across those personas. So, for example, individual focused desk based work, even in the office leaning persona, so those people who probably are more collaborative in nature, who probably are going to come to the office a little bit more frequently, even for those people, individual desk based work is important. And it's important to 86% of those individuals. You can see then 95% of remote leaning individuals find individual desk based an activity that's important to them. And so, if productivity is the business outcome that is important to you and your workplace why for the office, the remote leaning individuals are the more challenging people to bring back to the office, because they're getting experience at home that is acoustically and visually private, where they can be very focused and have this intimate space bespokely designed for them as an individual. If you want those types of activities to occur in the office, that can absolutely happen, but it just means that it becomes a little bit more difficult for that cohort of individuals. The balanced hybrid individuals or personas here are much more complex in nature in terms of their roles. It means that they have more activities for their roles, for them to be successful, as you can see, as opposed to the office and remote leaning here as well. So the balanced hybrid are those who need the office and the home very effectively to be able to do their roles well. And so here you have the function checklist. If you're thinking about originally that workplace why and that purpose, you now can identify the types of activities that you want to occur in that workplace environment. Do you know what those activities are? Do you know the functions and the activities that you want people to be doing at home as well? And how supported are they in those activities in both of those environments? Which activities make up a typical working day for those employees and across different departments and different business units as well? Because across an organization, that might also differ too. So it becomes a little bit more challenging in that sense. And then also, what will attract your employees to be magnetized away from the home experience and into that workplace experience as well? And identifying those activities is really important based on that workplace why at the forefront here. Then you have the third aspect here. So it's the last of the three sections, the form. If we go back to this airport analogy again, what are the features and equipment that an airport needs to do efficiently and to function effectively as well? Well, of course, here you've got this vehicle that helps to maneuver the plane into position as the plane's I actually didn't know this until a couple of years ago, but that planes can't reverse. So you need these vehicles to maneuver planes into position, which is a very distinct feature of an airport to be able to do that. Probably very few other environments need that type of feature. Another vehicle here to fuel the plane as well, which is very distinct to this environment. And then a ramp to get your luggage off as well safely back to the hands of the passengers that have flown on that flight as well. So distinct features that are contributing to that overarching workplace why and that purpose of the environment at the forefront. But if we look at that workplace environment in the office, when we did this research, we identified out of the 50 or more features that we look at in our Leesman survey, 23 of those 50 features were deemed important to more than 50% of employees. And I'll drill a bit deeper into that list here. So you can see things like the chair and desk. I think that's probably quite obvious to most of us. Small and large meeting rooms, then quiet rooms, help desks, air quality, office lighting, noise levels, temperature control. So these are the features that are important to 50% or more individuals when we looked at the cohorts of data that we looked at here. And then we've been able to map out of those features which influence the functions and then the purpose at the forefront there as well. So I won't go into too much detail of all of them. As Omar has already seen, there is a lot of information in these slides here to statistically map all of these features across the functions. But just to give you an idea here, if, as I say, if your purpose is productivity, we then know that individual focused desk-based work and telephone conversations are activities that are important for that purpose to inherently be good and be successful. Then the chair and desk as two features in that workplace have to be working really well for that to occur effectively in those activities. And then again, if we look at those enclosed spaces are servicing these activities here, so planned meetings, collaborating, video conferencing, informal social interaction. You then have technology, and that is influencing these types of activities on the left-hand side. Surprisingly to me, actually, all five of the indoor environment quality features came up as important to 50% or more people here. I would have expected definitely noise levels and temperature control because those are the two that get spoken about a lot across workplaces and everywhere else. But actually, lighting and air quality is also a very important feature for over 50% more employees. And that can also differ across regions as well. And then also facilities and services and food and beveraging as well. So I'll bring this to a sort of summary here. So on the right-hand side, you have that feature list that are important to 50% or more people, which serve the activities, the 8 activities that are important to 50% or more people across workplaces, which then serve those 4 business outcomes. So this is the step-by-step process that we think is important, and based on the data and statistically mapping this, something to really consider to create that minimum viable office. We're not talking here about the outstanding workplaces that I shared at the forefront here. We're talking the minimum viable office. So if you want to create the foundational office for people to experience a really good experience when they're moving through your workplaces, these are the activities and then the features that influence those activities that need to be investigated further for your organizations. And this might be different. This is average data, of course. So it might be different to your workplaces and your organizations, which is why you need to individually measure buildings and workplaces. But this does give you that North Star of information to look at. And then if we look at this table as well, we can get this table across to you. It identifies, again, those features across the functions and the activities. I'd like to draw your attention here on this table actually to relaxing and taking a break as an activity. Now, well-being is a huge topic around the world in workplaces, and so it should be. But as you can see, it's one of the most demanding activities from a feature perspective. So if you look on the far right-hand side here at relaxing and taking a break, which comes under the purpose or impact statements, community and culture, and pride and enjoyment. Relaxing and taking a break requires 17 features to be working effectively for that activity to be successful for people in the workplace. So it's a really demanding activity. So if you're wanting your workplace to be an environment that has that available to your people, then you need a really good chair and desk environment. You need quiet rooms and spaces. You need good air quality, good lighting, good temperature control. You need good cleanliness, tea and coffee refreshment facilities, and restaurant canteen areas where people can then find those spaces to relax and take a break as well. But it's just something I thought I'd share there because it is interesting that it is one of the most demanding activities across the workplace. The next one is informal social interaction and telephone conversations. They are also very demanding activities in terms of the features that you're implementing across your spaces here. So if we look at all the full list of the important office features and service features across workplaces, those that were important to more than 50% of people or more. I'll just give you a moment here to glance across this screen to look at what those are. So the desk and chair that I've already described, noise levels, tea and coffee refreshment facilities, parking, office lighting, quiet rooms, IT help desks. So these are the types of features that are important to a really big portion of your employees. What I'll show you now is the least supported features of this list. So these are the most important features that your employees are finding for the workplace for them to do their roles effectively. Now, these are the 5 lowest performing of those features. So noise levels at 35%, temperature control at 39%, 40% quiet rooms for working, 55% for desk room booking systems, and restaurant canteen as well. So these are the 5 features that are the lowest satisfied by your employees at the moment. I think probably noise levels is unsurprising. It's very difficult to get that right, especially in an era where we have the ability to work from home in often an acoustically private environment like I'm in here. There's no real distraction or noise around. When I go to the office, though, my colleagues are there, my friends are there, it's more open plan. There's much more elevated noise in that environment. So if I'm trying to achieve focused work, it becomes a much more difficult activity to occur in the workplace. So around the world, it's a difficult problem, but it just proves that we need to get better at these types of features. Temperature control, equally, again, it also depends on the demographics and different individuals working through that workplace here as well. So if these are some of the most important features for your employees or to your employees, but they are the lowest satisfied, why would employees willingly return to the office if the things that are important to them are low in satisfaction? And I think this is where we need to get better as a community at investigating those features and improving upon those that link then to the activities that you want your employees doing in that workplace, and then linking that back to the business outcome and the purpose of your workplace and the impact of that. So again, a checklist here just to run through when you're sitting down with your leadership team, your FM teams, your workplace experience teams, thinking about some of these questions, I think would go a long way. So do your workplaces meet employee expectations? Do your employees want to come to your workplaces, and are they inviting in terms of the features that I've just shared here? Are they acoustically private so that I can or we can do individual focused work or video conferencing type of work? Do you have room desk booking systems that enable us to interact with each other, our colleagues, our managers, or at least at the very least know where our colleagues and friends are around the workplace floor plate as well? And what is the food and beverage offering like around that space too? Because that is a very important feature. And some of these things you might not be able to fully control. So it's identifying those things that you can control, influence, and then some of those things that you just have to accept. But unless you measure this and identify these features according to your initial workplace why, it's difficult for then employees to have that sense of wanting to come back to the workplace when they can get a lot of this at home and in a really bespoke manner. So I guess that's the workplace research, and looking at that new minimum viable office there and statistically mapping, or we've been able to statistically map what are those features aligned with the functions, the activities, and then that workplace why and purpose. But I want to just bring it back full circle here. At the very beginning, I shared the Vitra floor plan. that was designed back in 2000. And I'll bring it up again on screen here. So this was a floor plan designed by Seville Peach in 2000. And as I described all of those features, I think you've hopefully felt the sentiment of that experience, that it really was well thought out and had those different elements attached to it because of the workplace why inputted and then the activities that you would do there whilst working as well. Now, I'm going to bring up some photos of 2023 of this space. And what's surprising and shocking, I think, for many of us is that even though this was a space designed back in 2000, the framework and the layout of the space remains unchanged, apart from some of the sort of maybe color changes or furniture specific changes. So as you can see here, this is exactly the same as it was in 2000. This is the library, completely unchanged, other than the chairs have changed slightly in terms of the furniture. Again, here, the cafe area or the breakout areas, the only thing that's really changed are the light pendants, but it's still in the same location as it was previously. Similarly, here again, that informal breakout zone and the cafe area. Nothing has inherently changed about the floor plan and the layout, maybe some of the features, again, with these individual desks, and then the meeting room spaces as well, other than the green chairs across this meeting room. So I think what this shows is that this is an impeccable return on experience investment. That something designed back in 2000 that has remained ultimately unchanged, apart from some of the features, is still working effectively well 20 years later. And that's something that we're looking into a little bit more here at Leesman, is this return on experience investment and what that looks like for workplaces around the world as well. If you're investing and spending a lot of money on these types of experiences and wanting to magnetize employees back to that workplace experience, are you doing so based on the ultimate purpose of that workplace? Do you know why you have an office and why that office is inherently going to draw people back outside of their home environments as well? And to quote Dieter Rams, I guess, it's not about having more and having every last detail in that workplace, but having better quality spaces and finding those marginal gains in that experience as well. So that's what we hope to achieve here, and hope we've been able to share that with some of this data. We'll certainly get this research report sent to Omar, and we can share that widely across all of this audience as well. So Omar, I'll stop there for a moment and open up for any questions.
Yeah, Kirsty, this is fantastic. I think I have a million questions, but I'm sure everyone else in the comments does as well. I'm going to switch us into Q&A mode just so we can have a little bit more visual. We did have a couple questions in the chat already, so we can jump in. We can show some of these as well. So this question came from Dominic. I think he was talking about the variations in workspaces, but not so many ergonomic workstations being in that feature office. Are people moving around? Like, how are they really handling the body dynamics? Or is the space just so ergonomically designed that it works for everybody?
That's a really good question. I think being Vitra, obviously a lot of the furniture is ergonomically designed. So I think by virtue of what they do, probably the space was elevated in that experience. And so whatever type of environment you were working from, it worked well in that sense as well. But also thinking that not every activity that you're doing has to be ergonomically perfect in a sense. It depends on
Hmm.
the time spent in that environment. So if you're in the library, perhaps that space is inviting you to read some documents or just have some focus time. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to have two screens on a monitor arm with a sit to stand desk and an ergonomic chair. Just needs to be comfortable for 10 to 15 minutes for you to focus, and then you might get up and move around to the next environment as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've actually interestingly visited and worked out of that office
Oh,
at an
cool.
event. It's a fantastic office, and it really does. Like, their offices really stand up today the same way they did when a lot of them were first built. I know they've been built in different time periods, but the Vitra offices are fantastic. I think we're going to jump into another question here. From Ryan Bernard, are there any markets where the index skews towards the offices as being more suited for work than the home?
Ooh, that's a
So
very
in
good
the,
question.
is there a breakdown of that? Are some regions doing better in the, I think when traditionally in real estate, what we're seeing right now is that the people returning to offices on a larger or higher basis are different in North America or North America and South America versus EMEA versus APAC on an aggregate basis. So I guess that's where that question comes from. Is there a difference in experience levels there?
When we look at our global benchmark, our global Leesman benchmark, there's no real difference. The home experience is supporting a lot of those activities better than the office. As you saw in the Leesman index and HLMI scores, the HLMI score is still much higher than that office experience score. That's not to say, though, that depending on a specific organization's workplace why, that the office would then be deemed a better environment for those specific activities than the home
Hmm.
environment. So I think in that sense, from a global perspective, no, the HLMI is still higher than the office LMI. But as I say, because this is average data, depending on you as an organization and the region that you're working from, that certainly might start to differ as well.
No, that makes sense. So if you dive deeper down into the individual data, it might be different than the average data of a region or a city or a country. Awesome. And we're going to get into another LinkedIn question. How often is Leesman updating the categories and features for participants to select from as new trends and experiences are incorporated into the workplace?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Actually, this year we did implement an updated methodology, which means that honestly, the majority of it did stay exactly the same as it always has done for the last 10 years, because ultimately, the way in which we work or the activities that we're doing hasn't changed. It's just the environments that we're doing those activities that is starting to change moreover. Um, with that said, we did add a couple of new features to obviously meet the new trends and the new times, such as video conferencing, and that more digital experience as well. But honestly, largely it has remained completely the same. And that is also to protect the sort of benchmark so that we can year on year, annually, and across that decade period, show the changes in trends as well. So it's not something that we would change on an annual basis or on a very regular basis, but certainly on a large trend basis, we are always looking into those updates and features and activities.
That makes sense. And I guess, Kirsty, would you say that like you have updated a lot more of your ways of measuring this post pandemic versus in the 5 years pre pandemic?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Awesome. And I think, a question I actually had about this kind of similar topic is as you're like looking at the basics, we talked about very much the basics that you're kitting into this survey. Are you seeing a lot of the majority of companies actually doing a good job at those basics? Or are you seeing a lot of companies not even achieving those basics necessarily? Because the minimum viable office, as you call it, right? That basic list of requirements. A lot of the companies we speak to on a day to day basis aren't even necessarily achieving that basic standard as opposed to like overachieving.
I absolutely agree. I think even some of the sort of Fortune 500 organizations that we work with are still not getting the basics right. And that's evident because people in those instances are remaining working from home and don't want to come back to the office. As I shared, if the features that people are finding important aren't supported well in the office experience, why would you willingly come to the office? We have to get those basics right. If not, then I think people will start slowly or even more quickly stay at home and not come back to the office. Having said
Hmm.
that, though, if you followed Leesman data over the years, the overall benchmark data overall LMI score is increasing. So
Hmm.
there are certain organizations and certain workplaces around the world which are taking this very seriously, and because they're continuously measuring with us and improving upon that experience, the overall global benchmark is slowly increasing with that as well. So I think that puts us in a really good position. It means that we are taking this seriously, but there are still some organizations that will be left behind if they don't get these basics right.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too in your basics list. I think that people see that list probably and might say, hey, we don't have the resources to have a cantina. We don't have the resources to have a restaurant. But, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I would imagine that it doesn't matter if the cantina is yours, but if you're locating your space or your workplace next to something that is a desirable place to eat lunch or a desirable place to have coffee or dinner, is that also a way to solve for some of those things without having to like invest your own capital?
Exactly. So that's exactly what I was describing with this. We do something called this control, influence, accept activity. So
Hmm.
if you identify a feature like restaurant or canteen, you might not have a building that has that service available to you in house, but the location of that building might be surrounded by lots of restaurants, canteens, and those types of amenities. Or you might be, whilst you're not across all the floors of one building, there might be a shared experience for that. So having the ability to influence that is really important. So it doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a restaurant in your building, but it does mean that because we know that's important, it might be that the amenities surrounding that building offer that experience as well. And it can be different for different organizations too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We have a few more questions from LinkedIn. Let's see. We have one. I love being able to pop these up. Any early updates slash insights from the launch of Leesman MIT 3-year study, or is that still on the burner cooking?
That's a very good question. We are hosting our annual summit in November, where we'll bring all of the participating organizations together for a full day summit to share those insights. So once we've achieved that, we'll certainly start to share those across publicly with you. So what I would say is stay tuned. One insight I can share is, hopefully I don't butcher this, but 46% of people are feeling disconnected
Hmm.
working remotely. So that is something that has come up out of the hybrid future research at the moment. But that's all I can share right now. And willingly will share it post the summit that we have.
No, we really appreciate the open and transparent sharing you all have always done. And I think that's one of the things that we've appreciated so much about Leesman. This is a longer question from Robin. I will be quite transparent about that. But I think it's important. I think what she was trying to get at is that the productivity and purpose may not really accurately capture like creativity and innovation. And I think it's one of those questions of like, how does the methodology touch on, at the end of her question, she asks, if an org focusing on productivity is looking at only at desk-based work and telephone conversations, they may be missing a huge opportunity within creativity and innovation. So if you're only looking at these things, are we capturing the more nuanced parts and pieces?
Yeah, absolutely. I think ultimately there are some, I guess, workplace hygiene factors where if productivity is one of those important workplace whys or purposes of why you have a workplace, then of course that inherently the features will match that. But it's not to say that workplace won't also have or shouldn't also have meeting rooms and quiet spaces for you to collaborate with each other. It just means that maybe the priority shifts slightly towards that productivity type of activity, but not necessarily disregarding any of those other features that might influence a really great experience across the board.
And Robin, if we butchered your question, please let us know in the
I can
comments and
see
we
it's a
will.
very long question. I might have a proper read through it afterwards and share some more thoughts on that, Robin. So thank you.
Yeah, Kirsty, one other question quickly about the work you all are doing now. Are there any organizations that you're seeing that are doing this exceedingly well? Even if they are super resource organizations, I think people are always really looking towards examples, not necessarily for benchmarking, but for examples of companies that they should be seeing as like truly good examples who are trying to get the work done and doing a good job of executing on these things. Within your purview, are you seeing companies that you would say are actually doing the work, getting it done, and actually like doing a good job at it?
Yeah, certainly the examples I shared earlier. So, Government Property Agency here in the UK, and Boston Consulting Group, and BHP globally are doing some fantastic things. And they have not only created a minimum viable office, but they are going above and beyond, which is why they've been certified as Leesman Plus Outstanding Buildings. Another organization I work quite closely with is Standard Chartered Bank. A lot of you will be familiar with their twice the experience sentiment across their workplaces. And just to give you some context, out of around the 7,000 workplaces that we've surveyed, in 2022, 54 of those workplaces were certified Leesman Plus, and 50% of those were Standard Chartered Bank workplaces.
Hmm.
So if you want to look into what they're doing well, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you about what they're up to. They do some fantastic things, and they've just taken it really seriously. They have a huge resource of workplace experience, real estate professionals, well-being professionals around them that can implement all of these features across the workplaces. But they're doing an incredible job around it. So I would say Standard Chartered Bank are probably one to look out for.
That's awesome. And I think it's counterintuitive because I think people often think of the shining examples of like large scale tech companies as these companies who are doing workplace experience or pushing it really far and fast. But yeah, the example of the Vitra office and the way they think about hospitality, sustainability, and like a lot of the things they do on their campus even are really forward thinking. Standard Chartered Bank is not the first name that would come to mind for me for an incredible, workplace experience, but it's amazing that they're doing that work.
And also, often actually, we work with a lot of government agencies too. And I think government agencies also have this perception, like you've just shared, that they come to us and say, we want to have experiences like the tech organizations, the financial institutes around the world, the top organizations. And in fact, many of the government organizations and agencies that we work with have better workplaces than the privately held people or organizations that have loads and loads of money to invest in this type of experience. So
Hmm.
what I would say to that is, um, don't copy what everybody else is doing. Certainly gain some, maybe some influence or inspiration from what others are doing. But ultimately, you have to understand your own purpose based on your own organization's business outcomes, what you want to achieve. And let's get away from this rhetoric of all having Google offices and all having the same offices, because that just isn't good for anybody.
Yes. 100% agree. Let's not do the copy paste that people did in the early 2000s of copying all the things. I think people copied a lot of the things that were not necessarily what made the office, like their spaces actually great or the workplace is actually great. They copied the facade, they didn't copy the actual purpose.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think that's important to consider. So we're coming up on time, but Kirsty, there's a question here that came up, which I'm like, this is perfect timing. What is the best way to reference your insights and data or to partner with Leesman? How do we find you? How do we find Leesman? Where can we get more of this great information?
Absolutely. If this was somewhere from LinkedIn, please connect with us on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Tim, our CEO, is also, as are many of our colleagues. We have a Leesman LinkedIn profile as well, of course. So, yeah, we can get in touch with myself individually or jump on our Leesman website too. And we have some contact details there, and we will get those details farmed out to us as a team as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kirsty. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We're going to be sharing out the recording from this session to the community. We'll also be continuing to keep the LinkedIn Live up recording, and then we will share the deck as well to our community, and any other resources that Kirsty sends our way, we'll share with everyone as well. Thank you so much for joining. Kirsty, thank you so much for the amazing information and insights, and thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the questions as well, and hope to keep in touch with you all. Thank you, Omar. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, same.
Take care.